Hello, everybody. All right, sorry about that. I got a little distracted. That's why I didn't start 5 seconds before. But anyways, well, today is Wednesday, um, December the 11th, 2024. Hump day for the second week of December 2024. Hopefully, everybody's had a good week thus far. Ready to get over the hump, finish out the week strong. As we, of course, I give people a chance to come in here. We'll go ahead, wait a few minutes before I get started talking about what's on tap for tonight. Um, let's see. Um, let's do something here. And as always, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in to engage, that'd be appreciated as well. Alrighty then. So let's see. Gummy bears bouncing here and there and everywhere. Find adventure that's beyond compare. They are the gummy bears. They are the gummy bears. Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm strong to the finish when I eat my spinach. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's Superman. Superman, man of steel, Superman. Da-da-da. Let's see. If I could, then I would go wherever you will go, way up high or down low. Okay, we're at the 3 minute mark, so I guess I'll talk about what's on tap for it. So tonight we're gonna go over a couple articles, one from Bleeding Fool, and then another, and then a profile piece we'll do. First off, we're gonna go over when we go over to Bleeding Fool. We're gonna be looking at a story talking about how I guess in the latest edition of one of DC Comics, one that Tom Taylor is writing, apparently he has woke Superman lecture Batman about his white privilege. We look at that. It's an Avi article, so always an interesting read. Always an interesting read and analysis on that. And then afterwards, as in recent months, of course, I did a recent profile. Went back, looked back over the career of Jackson Beck, voice actor Jackson Beck, who was the voice of Bluto in the Popeye cartoons from basically the 1942, I believe, through 1980, and then last night, of course, we took a look at a Me TV Tunes article on May Quetzal, how she was almost forced to stop acting and voice acting when her grandparents threatened to basically write her out of the will. We saw how that all ended up. So with that, we've done Jackson Beck and May Quetzal, 2/3 of the Popeye triad, as it were. Now tonight, of course, we'll take a look at the career of Jack Mercer, who was the longest running voice of Popeye, now having replaced William Costello after Costello left Fleischer Studios due to a contract dispute back in 1934, as Mercer voiced Popeye from 1934 all the way up to 1980 in the animated portion of the live action Popeye movie starring Robin Williams and Shelley Duvall. With that being said, of course, let me just do one more thing, and then we will get. And of course, we'll have the wrestling wrap up and the This Day in Each History segments. Let me just do one more thing here, and then we will get going. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the articles then. Our first look, as it were, into the. Oh, here we go. Woke Superman scolds Batman about his, smaller quotes, privilege in DC Comics. Article by Avi Green, published earlier today. So let's go ahead and get into this. Now, mind you, what's kind of funny about this too is, I've read a number of Batman comics. I've watched, a lot of the the cartoons with him in it, and the live action series. And if anything, he is, Batman is not, even though, he is rich and all that, he's oftentimes been depicted as using that wealth for the benefit of others. Okay, particularly in the 90s cartoon. But but let's go ahead and get into this. So Warner Todd Houston at Breitbart lets readers know that DC is still allowing the awful this is Avi speaking, this is his article, awful Tom Taylor to shove additional lectures into their comics, with the quote-unquote world's finest quote-unquote duo now on the receiving end of Taylor's unendurable wokeness. You would think these people would learn that that woke it, go woke, go broke, but I guess they'll never learn. I guess if they haven't learned by now, they probably won't ever learn. But anyways, so this from the Breitbart article. DC Comics is now featuring a woke Superman lecturing Batman about his, in quotes here, privilege in a recent issue of the Dark Knight's flagship series, Detective Comics. The woke scolding is turned up to 11 in Detective Comics number 1050 as extreme leftist author Tom Taylor doles out a slew of partisan talking points to his readers. Again, a far cry if you've ever read any of the earlier World's Finest, or seen any depictions of the times, when Superman and Batman have worked together, whether it's in, the comics, cartoons, or even live action. Obviously a far cry from that. Not only does Supes castigate Bruce Wayne Batman about his white privilege and wealth, but two other themes threaten him in the issue. Batman struggles with his mental health due to years of crime fighting and tragedy, and the creator of a youth-restoring drug intends to give her concoction to the rich so they can live long enough to see the global warming damage their wealth has caused. No, really. Oh, boy. Taylor's a real piece of work, isn't he? Again, casting the rich casting wealthy people as evil, Let's give them a drug so they can stay young, so they can, sit there and snicker at everybody else while the world burns. Yeah, you have to wonder why this man's even let loose upon the world. Why Tom Taylor's let loose upon the world. Anyways, continuing on with our end. As always, guys, first off, a friendly reminder, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, as to Superman, his lecture occurs after Batman tells him that he is contemplating taking a new drug created by inventor Scarlet Scott. The drug supposedly prolongs life and gives older people the same vitality and strength that they had when they were in their 20s. But it's very expensive, so because he is wealthy enough to afford the drug therapy, Bruce Wayne is thinking of taking the drug so that he can fight crime for an extended period of time. Batman explains the drug to Superman and says, quote, I've been offered something, a medical breakthrough. It's rare, only available to a select few. It slows aging, unquote. All right. So this is still within the article from Breitbart. Quote unquote. It sounds good, Superman replies, according to Fandom Pulse. The Man of Steel, though, catches on that Batman has some reservations about taking the drug, and then gets preachy, saying, quote, the guilt, of course, Bruce. This country does many things well, but it leaves too many behind, unquote. Oh boy. Superman continues his rant with a dig at Bruce for being rich, which, again, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster would have never had Superman do that. And even some of his subsequent writers after that would have never had him do that. Quote, your wealth and privilege already ensure you have a greater life expectancy. You can eat better, you can access the best levels of healthcare, unquote. The inventor of the drug also has an ultra woke agenda in Taylor's Tale. According to Batman News, Scarlet Scott tells Bruce Wayne that, quote, her plan is to make the ultra wealthy care about the planet more by making them live long enough to experience the consequences of their actions, unquote. Oh, okay. That's an interesting twist. However, I doubt very seriously that because, in trying to castigate the wealthy here, you think that if these people were really the way, here's what I would say to Mr. Taylor on that particular point. You think that them living longer would actually make them care about the planet more? Really? They have enough money as he had Superman castigate to Batman there. They have the money to where they could prolong their life. They could they could eat the best food. They could eat the best healthiest food. They could get the best medical treatment. Now, mind you, let me just remind everybody, particularly from back when, if for those of you who remember the 90s Batman the Animated Series cartoon, right? Bruce Wayne has always been depicted as somebody who is very charitable with his wealth. The Wayne Foundation in of itself is more or less a charity organization that that gives out scholarships, that helps funds many things, including medical research to better people's lives. All people, not just the rich, you know. So Mr. Taylor here is extreme leftist. We know he's an extreme leftist, but he's really showing his colors. He's also showing his ignorance as to the origins of the character, as to how he's been depicted over the years. Just going with his own, woke interpretation of how Batman and Superman are. Which is probably why, again, DC Comics are not selling as much as they could. But anyways, now going back to Avi here. Now, considering Clark Kent's often been depicted as pretty well off himself, far from a pauper, and living along with Lois Lane in tidy apartments and other such living quarters, that's just one reason why this is supremely silly and selfish for Taylor to have Superman lecture Batman about wealth and privilege. And, Avi makes a very good point there. Because Superman himself, granted, he may not be like wealthy like Bruce Wayne is, but he is no pauper. He's never been a pauper, he's been in a profession that's kind of allowed him to, do well for himself. He doesn't have to worry as much. He can go out for nice dinners as well. Um, he lives relatively comfortably. So yeah. In the Pulse entry, it also reminds what Taylor did to the Jonathan Kent character, who's a pretty recent creation. So going back to the Pulse article here, not only were covers unveiled where Jonathan Kent Superman was protesting against climate change to make a leftist run out of the book, which I'm sure we all remember seeing those, right? I covered that too quite a bit back then, where Jonathan Kent just go total lefty woke, all that, But he also turned the character gay by having him make out and even at one point mock the Christian sacrament of marriage by implying Superman would gay marry this other boy. Yeah, and I'm sure that, which is why that particular run of the title, I don't think is currently running. I don't think, but I think that thing, lasted only like a year, maybe. Quote, so we have a young bi guy who also is just the sweetest, most empathic, nurturing guy who doesn't want to hurt anyone, unquote. Taylor bragged about the situation to AIPT. But unfortunately for Mr. Taylor, he forgot about, he decided to disregard Clark Kent's, upbringings, as the son of Jonathan Kent the first and Martha Kent, and how that sense of helping out your community was nurtured into him, in Smallville. Quote, and I think that's far more heroic than somebody punching a supervillain in the face, unquote. You would, Taylor, you would. All right, so then here's Avi speaking again on the matter. Does that mean the hero is wrong to sock even a villain who's physically, sexually threatening innocent women and children? What such laughable statements do is excuse the behavior of the most evil of criminals and imply Jack Kirby and Joe Simon were wrong to depict Captain America punching Hitler in the face on the premiere issue of Captain America Comics from 1941. Mm-hmm. Let's see. So this is back to the article that Avi's referencing. In Detective Comics number 1091, just 2 issues into his new run on the book, Tom Taylor has waded into politics again. So probably is into that book because, of course, the Superman book that he was doing, ran its course. While the word white, quote unquote, seems to have been left out, the implication is clear what Tom Taylor intends from a passage where Batman is mulling over using experimental medical technology to heal a condition that's killing him. One would think that he'd be worried about the experimental nature itself, but no, it's an implication of white guilt. These talking points are usually accompanied with the word white, quote unquote, attached, but it appears as if DC editorial at least wanted to make it a little less on the nose with Tom Taylor stopping a comic in its tracks to lecture a reader on politics. Well, we haven't, as I've been watching some of the coverage from people like Yellow Flash, like Hero Hay, and a few others, it does seem increasingly, it does seem to be increasingly out there that I think the editors are basically telling the writers to tone it down. It would appear a little bit. Maybe Taylor's not being pressured to as much, but I have been seeing some articles and some features out there that have been indicating that, across all media, some of the higher ups are finally starting to tell them, hey, look, tone down the woke dialogue here, or the woke monologues here. This, people are not buying our books. Pushing this is not getting us anywhere. It's just turning people away. So, regardless, this is what DC Comics hires when they put Tom Taylor on a book. Now, Batman's main title, mired with political lectures instead of being a fun book for everyone. And the funny thing is, here's the thing, and I know Yellow Flash talked about this a while back, too, in regards to that. At least up until this point, I don't know if it's still the case, but Batman was really the one book on DC that was really selling well. The Batman titles were the ones that were selling well. They were in the top 50 of that one site, ICV2 or whatever, that ranks the 50 best-selling comic books. I think it was the only, the Batman books are the only DC books making that top 50. So it's, it is something to be said there. Anyways, actually, before we read this last article, I do need to go off camera here for a quick moment. So I'll be right back. I'll put some music on to keep you all entertained while I'm gone. I'll be right back. Alrighty then. So, anyways, we're back now. So I'll finish off this article and then, um, of course, I'll finish off this article and then we'll move on to the Jack Mercer profile I'm going to do tonight. So, something it hasn't been for over 2 decades now, ever since Chuck Dixon left and was blacklisted by Dan Didio, that EIC executive in charge, Marie Javins, allowed Taylor to pull even this should make clear where DC staff still stands. Why both Superman and Batman's titles will have to be strenuously avoided from now on. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, unless of course you want to read back issues, and of course you guys can always check out come by on Sundays from at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern, where we read the older comics, and we do touch upon some of the older DC stories, and all that, you know, um, as I'm just basically chronologically going forward in time, as it were. But with that being said, now we're done with that article. So why don't we? So now, let me go ahead and move on to the next next thing I was going to do, which was go back and take a look at the career of Jack Mercer, the probably longest serving voice of Popeye. Um, as of course, as I mentioned earlier, um, we I did recently go back and go over the career of Jackson Beck, who voiced Bluto from 1942 to 1980. We looked back at his career. We did, an art. We read a MeTV Tunes article on Mae Quetzel last night, where her Orthodox Jewish family, had actually threatened to cut her out of the will. That her grandparents had threatened to cut her out of the will. She didn't stop acting classes because they felt acting was not a respectable occupation job for a young woman. But but now we're going to take a look at the life and career of Jack Mercer. Of course, as I said, the long time serving as probably the longest serving voice of Popeye from 1934 to 1980. His last role was the animated sequence in the live action Popeye movies. But anyways, we'll get more in depth than that here in a moment. So let's take a look now at Jack Mercer here. So, and we're talking about the voice actor, not the English cricketer or the American baseball player. Talking about the voice actor. So, Winfield Bennett Mercer, January 31st, 1910, December 7th, 1984. So, 40-year anniversary from his death this past Saturday. Known professionally as Jack Mercer, was an American voice actor. He is best known as the voice of cartoon characters Popeye the Sailor Man and Felix the Cat. The son of vaudeville and Broadway performers, he also performed on the vaudeville and legitimate stages. So, and of course, they have a picture there of Jack Mercer back in 1978, around the time he was doing the all-new Popeye show. So, Popeye the Sailor. Now, also, just another little note here for you guys to know. Aside from acting and voice acting, he also did do quite a bit of writing particularly for Fleischer and Famous Studios. He was involved with writing the stories, writing the scripts, and all that. So just another little thing. Just a little thing to take note. So now, Popeye the Sailor. Mercer began his work in cartoons as an quote-unquote in-betweener, an apprentice animator at Fleischer Studios. Mercer liked to imitate voices, including one close call when he mimicked the high-pitched and loud voice of the wife of one of the Fleischers after he mistakenly thought she had left the studio. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That could be trouble. Especially if she did not find it all that amusing. I'm sure that caused quite a bit of a stir, say the least. All right, so when William Costello, the original cartoon voice of Popeye from 1933 to 1935, became difficult to work with, he was dismissed. Mercer had begun imitating Costello's interpretation of Popeye, and he practiced it until his voice, quote unquote, cracked just right, and he had it down. Searching for a replacement for Costello, Lou Fleischer heard Mercer singing the Popeye theme song and gave him the job of doing the voice. Mercer's first cartoon was 1935's King of the Mardi Gras. So it was actually 35 to 1935. Well, yeah, 1935 to 1980 as Popeye. He was active as an actor all the way up, I think, until his end there. But let's see. And again, if you guys haven't already, you guys can, help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we get some more friendly people here to engage. It'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. And I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, continuing on here. Mercer voiced Popeye for more than 40 years, first for the Fleischers, then for Paramount's famous studio cartoons from 1942 to 1957, when, of course, famous studios took over, from the Fleischers. Then for a series of television cartoons for King Feature Syndicate in 1961. That was basically the early 60s cartoons that, if y'all remember growing up, I saw those. They were in syndication when I was growing up, in the 80s. And finally, for a Saturday morning cartoon show that ran from 1978 to 1983, produced by William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. That was, of course, the all-new Popeye Comedy Hour. Mercer also read the lines for the opening segment of the 1980 live-action film. The film's regular role of Popeye was played by Robin Williams. Other voice work. So Mercer, Mercer was a staple with the Fleischers and later famous studios. So he did quite a bit of work for a lot of the Paramount animated productions. So. All right, so continuing on here. So his other voice work. Mercer also did other cartoon voices. In the Popeye cartoons, he also voiced Wimpy, Poop Deck Pappy, and Popeye's nephews. Of course, the nephews were Peepeye, Pipeye, Poopeye, and Popeye. For Fleischer's feature film Gulliver's Travels, which came out in 1939, he voiced King Little, Twinkle Toes, the carrier pigeon, and the bumbling spies Sneak, Snoop, and Snitch. He played supporting characters Mr. Bumble and Swat the Fly, for Fleischer's second feature, Mr. Bug Goes to Town. Mr. Bug Goes to Town didn't do as well as Gulliver's Travels did. Of course, Gulliver's Travels based on the novel. So he was also regularly cast with Pinto Colvig, who voiced Gabby in Gulliver's Travels and the spin-off Gabby film series. Mercer also played Pinto Colvig was also a long time guy who did Bozo the Clown as well. Mercer also played numerous supporting characters in Fleischer's Superman series in 1941-42. Mercer's natural voice was relatively high-pitched for a man, and he was able to do some of the female voices as well. Now, usually we see it the other way around. Usually, particularly for prepubescent boys, usually women get cast in those roles. Because again, before the voice cracks and all that, but so moving along. Beginning in 1958, Mercer also provided all the voices for the Felix the Cat TV cartoons, including The Professor and Rock Bottom, produced by former Paramount animator Joe Oriolo. Mercer later worked with Oriolo on The Mighty Hercules. In addition to his vocal talents, Mercer was also a prolific comedy writer. He wrote hundreds of scripts for various cartoon series at Paramount. Yeah, as I've watched not only like a lot of the Popeye cartoons, but also a number of the Harvey Toons cartoons. Mercer's writing credit is there quite a bit, including a number of Popeye episodes, as well as for television's Deputy Dog and Milton the Monster. Jack Mercer appeared as himself on the 1973 episode of To Tell the Truth, receiving one of 4 possible votes. So he kind of pulled him. Personal life. So Mercer's first wife was Margie Hines, who provided the voice of Olive Oyl from 1939 to 1944. So now this was during a time when Fleischer Studios had moved out of New York down to Florida, down to Miami, and continued producing the Popeye cartoons in Miami. But Mae Quetzel, as I mentioned last night, Mae Quetzel had chosen to stay behind in New York so she could start a family. Of course, in 1938-39, Mae Quetzel would have been like 31 at that point, being born in 1908. And I do need to go off camera here for another quick moment. I'll be right back, but I will put some music on while I'm gone. Yeah, should I? Now, granted, it's interesting too when you have a husband and wife doing voices together, as obviously Jack and Margie did for 5 years here. I mean, I know of some other, I recently found at least a couple more, husband and wife duos. And, well, I mean, there's been a few over the year. I mean, there's also, of course, the Owenses, Ray and Sonia Owens, who, provided a lot of the voices on, like, some of the Fred Ladd produced, anime adaptation, Western localization adaptations from an anime back in the 60s. As well as Billy Lou Watt and Hal Studer as well, who are also involved in that. And then even in modern day, you have the Epcars, you have Mary Elizabeth McGlynn and Stephen Bloom. You have, now granted, these are more of them are more the anime dub voice actors, but let's see, Tara Platt and Yuri Lowenthal. So, yeah, so quite a few there. They were divorced in 1950. He later married Virginia Carroll. The couple remained married until Mercer's death in 1984. Originally a resident of New York City, Mercer moved to Miami, Florida when Fleischer Studios relocated there in 1938. After Famous Studios took over the Popeye cartoons, Mercer moved back to New York City by early 1944. In the late 1970s, he lived briefly in Los Angeles, but moved back to New York City to live in Woodside, Queens. His passing happened at Lenox Hill Hospital in Manhattan on December 7th after stomach cancer-related problems. So in terms of his filmography, in terms of his voice acting career, as we said, of course, he was a part of the Popeye shorts from 1935, 1957. Those were the Fleischer Famous Studios shorts. He provided a couple voices on the Gulliver's Travel movie, Mr. Bug Goes to Town, Felix the Cat from 1958 to 1960. All characters there. He, of course, he provided some voices on the new cast for the cartoon. Again, another show that was produced by, that was Harvey Toons was producing it, and then he. And of course, Paramount was distributing that one, I believe. Bear, Stork, and Spooky. In the Mighty Hercules, you had some voices there. And as I said, the all-new Popeye Hour, which was 1978 to 1983, in which he pretty much reprised a lot of his roles from the shorts. As Popeye, Poop Deck Pappy, the nephews. And then he, of course, was also did the animated prologue and this is said to be his final film role. Then as writer, as we talked about, he was a story writer on the Popeye shorts from 1942 to 1957. Wrote a couple episodes of Deputy Dog in 1963. 16 episodes of Dinky Dog in 1978. And then, of course, he was one of the main writers for the all-new Popeye Hour. So, there you go. So that's pretty much the career of Jack Mercer right there. And it looks like we've made pretty good time here. We're up to 44 minutes. So, I think it'll be a good time now to move on to the wrestling wrap-up. And first off, we're going to look back to last night, and I need to go off camera here for just one more time. Just give me a sec here. I'll be right back with some music on the way. All right, I'm back now. So let's go ahead and take a look back at or first off, let's go back to last night's um NXT. WWE NXT is, of course, obviously some things happened there. And on last night's NXT, of course, show opened up with Javon Evans defeating Wes Lee in just shy of 12 and a half minutes. Hank and Tank in a tag team match. Hank Walker and Tank Ledger defeated Tyrek Igwe and Tyson Duport. Fatal Influence of JC Jane and Jasmine Nix with NXT um, women's North American champion Fallon Hanley defeated Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley. And after the match, of course, Fatal Influence sat there and tried to beat up on Dolan and Paxley, only for the surprise return of Shotzi to come in and make the save after having been out since February with injuries. So look like Shotzi's back. In a match for the NXT North American title, Tony D'Angelo with his family in his corner defeated former NXT champion, retained by defeating former NXT champion Ethan Page. And then in the main event, NXT Women's Champion Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade defeated Julia and Kalani Jordan, in which Julia is right now the number one contender, coming off of the um, Iron Survivor challenge this past week at the deadline. So, and then of course, so now we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna talk about what's on tap for tonight's Dynamite. As we do know, there's quite a bit happening on tonight's Dynamite, as you got two Gold League matches happening in the Continental Classic. And you have the finals of the Dynamite Diamond Battle Royal happening, to see who goes on to wrestle World's End to take on MJF. So let's at least take a look at the card here. So AEW World Champion Jon Moxley, with 1/3 of the AEW World Trio Champions Pac as the Death Riders, will be taking on former three-time AEW International Champion Orange Cassidy and former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Switchblade Jay White. In the Gold League matchups, Claudio Castagnoli continues to looks to continue his run of luck as he takes on Will Ospreay. Ospreay looks to get 3 more points and get tied with Castagnoli for the lead. In the other Gold League match, you have we have a battle of two guys with 3 points, Ricochet and Brody King. In between all that, as I said, you have the finals of the Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal, in which Kyle O'Reilly takes on Adam Cole to see who goes on to World's End to take on MJF, to see who comes out of that with the Dynamite Diamond ring. And in the main event, we'll see Mariah May defend the AEW Women's World title against Mina Shirakawa. So that's pretty much all I got for you guys in terms of the wrestling wrap up, as it were. We'll have, of course, with tomorrow, we'll have more news tomorrow night, talking about Impact and all that tomorrow night. So now, with today being Wednesday, December the 11th, 2024, let's take a look back at this day in niche history. History! So, let's see here. All right. So, first off, we're going to head back to 15 years ago today, back to 2009. And on this date in 2009, Madhouse's Needless completed its run in on Japanese television on this date back in 2009. So 15 years ago today, Madhouse's Needless anime concluded its run on Japanese television. For those of you who don't know about Needless, basically, his anime is set in the year 2130. The beginning date remains unclear. 50 years after World War III, the war has left a crater where Tokyo once stood, a place now filled with contaminated rubble. The spot, known as "quote unquote" the black spot, has no electrical power, with the exception of being the Simeon Building. It is seen as a dark spherical patch from outer space and one of many black spots across Japan. The black spot eventually becomes populated by outcasts, some of whom, as a result of contamination, gain various powers called fragments. Those in possession of such fragments come to be known as needless. So kind of interesting. You get a superpower or whatever, and yet you're deemed needless. Kind of an interesting twist. I've seen this anime. It's kind of interesting. So, anyways, 15 years ago today, Madhouse's Needless concluded its run on Japanese television. 2009 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. As also on this date in 2009, in the world of animation, Walt Disney's The Princess and the Frog is released, directed by Ron Clements and John Musker. This was the first Disney production that with an African American lead character. This marks Disney's first theatrical hand-drawn animation feature since Home on the Range in 2004. So on this date 15 years ago today, The Princess and the Frog is released by Disney, Walt Disney Company. Well, anyways, moving on to the next piece of niche history. As we move ahead to 10 years ago, 2014, on this date in 2014. So WWE's NXT TakeOver number 3, known as Our Evolution, was a pay-per-view event that took place on, as part of the 254th episode on this date back in 2014, 10 years ago today, from Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida. The show in the main event saw in a career versus championship match, Sami Zayn defeated Adrian Neville to win the NXT championship in a match in which, if he had lost, he would have been forced to leave the WWE. Adrian Neville, of course, who now wrestles as Pac in AEW. Charlotte Flair retained the NXT Women's Champion on the show over Sasha Banks. Finn Balor and Hideo Itami defeated the Ascension's Connor and Victor. Let's see. In a match for the NXT Tag Team Championships, the Lucha Dragons of Kalisto and Sin Cara defeated the Vaudevillians of Aiden English and Simon Gotch. Aiden English, who now is, of course, known by his real name, Matthew Raywalt on TNA. And then Kevin Owens made his debut in WWE and NXT by defeating CJ Parker to open up the show. So 10 years ago today, WWE's NXT TakeOver number 3, Our Evolution, took place on this date 10 years ago. And finally, 5 years ago, back in 2019, on this date 5 years ago today, in 2019, as soon as I pull it up here, this date in 2019, the 40th and final issue of Star Wars Dr. Aphra from Marvel went on sale on this date back in 2019. Sold for $3.99. Was 28 pages. The story was called A Rogue's End Part 4. Part 4 of the Rogue's End storyline. Written by Simon Spurrier. Art by Casper Wingeard. Let's see. Lettered by Joe Caramagna, and Lee Lowridge did the coloring. So the 40th and final issue of Star Wars Dr. Aphra went on sale from Marvel, went on sale on this date back 5 years ago. With that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. We'll of course be back here tomorrow night with more niche news. As such, we will, and of course, this Sunday I'll have Metal from the Vomitorium with me, as we will be looking back to comics that went on sale back in April 1940. We'll be looking at comics that went on sale from David McKay Publications and Eastern Color. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope. Let's see. I guess I'll give it a little longer here. So I hope everybody did enjoy the show. Hope you guys have been liking, my little, in the corner there, my little subtitles there. That usually will give you some kind of clue as to what I covered in the show. If you happen to come in late or whatever, you can always go back and watch again. So tonight, we went over, of course, the whole Tom Taylor writing in Detective Comics, and then Jack Mercer's profile. We kind of concluded the Popeye triad, as it were, of Jackson Beck, Make Wetzel, and Jack Mercer. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.